Hello, I'm Jonasz Rewiński and you're watching Break the Fake. They make them, we break them, and tell you everything you need to know. Russia's State Duma deputy Evgeny Fyodorov once again looked into the handbook of global conspiracies and announced a sensational discovery. It turns out that the United States invested huge amounts of money in organizing a Maidan in Iran. Oh, just in case you forgot, the Maidan was a series of protests in Ukraine in 2013 and 2014, which ultimately led to the collapse of the Russia-friendly Yanukovych regime. Not surprising, the Russians hate it today, fearing the same thing could happen in Moscow one day. But also, and here is a fun fact, the word Maidan, meaning town square, originally comes from Persian. So here is history possibly about to turn a bizarre full circle.
Реальность тема не в том, чтобы он уедет Хамини или нет, а удастся ли иранским властям подавить Майдан, который американцы организовали на территории Ирана. Вот это главное, удастся или нет. Потому что для Майдана они вложили огромные деньги. Технология-то такая же, как в Югославии. Заметили, побомбили, прошло время, подняли Майдан. Так и здесь у нас они то же самое же планируют. Добиться от нас перемирия. Пройдет время, несколько месяцев, поднимут Майдан. Вот это их технология. А наша технология – это мир. А мир возможен только на основе правовых оснований, о которых мы многократно говорили.
Anyway, what is happening in Iran right now? Well, demonstrations that began due to the catastrophic economic situation have grown into large-scale anti-government protests across the country. The protests have been going on for more than 2 weeks, spreading to dozens of cities, from Tehran and Isfahan to provinces far from the center, with participants voicing not only economic demands, but also political ones, regime change, criticism of Supreme Leader Khamenei, and even calls for the restoration of the monarchy. The Iranian authorities responded with repression. Security forces used combat weapons, tear gas, and large-scale arrests, calling protesters rebels and enemies of the state. Moreover, the government has blocked the internet throughout the country, which makes it much harder for protesters to mobilize. Not that it's stopping them, though. And with the specter of American intervention that could give the regime a not-so-gentle nudge, leading to potential collapse, Moscow has reasons to feel anxious, since its global allies have recently taken to dropping like flies. First Assad, then Maduro, but now this. Statements such as that of Mr. Fyodorov have long become a separate genre of Russian political rhetoric, something between a political forecast and a horoscope, or a horror-scope, given how much the prospect of toppling dictatorships terrifies Putin and his cronies. In this genre, it doesn't matter that Iran has been experiencing a long-standing internal crisis, economic sanctions, repression, and social discontent. It is much easier to explain everything away with American money than to admit that people sometimes take to the streets to protest without a call from the State Department. And also, if people can take to the streets in Tehran, why not Moscow? Today, it's mostly crickets from ordinary Russians who have been browbeaten into submission by the glorified KGB crew that rules the country. But who knows what tomorrow could bring? Remember Fight the Future, that X-Files movie from the late 90s? You see, from Moscow, Fight the Future isn't fiction at all. It's actual policy. The doors of the apocalypse have slammed shut on social media again. This time in the form of a video disguised as footage from a reputable Western outlet. The video, from the series All Is Lost Pack Your Bags apparently, convinces viewers that Poland, Germany and France have allegedly promised to return more than 40,000 men of draft age into Ukraine within 2 months. Why 40,000? Nobody knows. Maybe it's a tongue-in-cheek reference to Warhammer 40k. Don't ask me. Now, to add even more drama, the authors of the fake video used real footage of the meeting of the Coalition of the Willing in Paris on the 6th of January. But instead of the dialogue that actually went on there, they superimposed fictional text over the footage. So, as a result, we've got something like an emergency decision kind of thing, people talking about it, nobody asked for it, but it's all absolutely fake. Now, let's take a look at how far the Russians actually went to create this mystification.
Poland, Germany, and France have pledged to return more than 40,000 conscripts to Ukraine within 2 months to perform military service. This is one of the points of the Declaration on Robust Security Guarantees for a Solid and Lasting Peace in Ukraine, signed on the 6th of January in Paris. This initiative serves to assist Ukraine in the staffing of its military forces. Experts recommend that Ukrainians who fear being caught up in the fighting leave Europe. This also applies to those who have families with children. Experts consider Asian countries with which Ukraine has not yet signed any agreements to be the optimal direction.
Now look, in reality, there have been no official statements, decisions or agreements between Ukraine and EU countries regarding the forced return of 40,000 people in 2 months. This supposed measure is nowhere to be found in government documents, political statements, or, and this is particularly unfortunate for the video's authors, in the Western media, whose style they so diligently tried to imitate. Information security experts emphasize that such videos are part of Russia's hybrid warfare. Its goals are quite transparent: to scare Ukrainians living abroad, to cause discord between Ukraine and its European partners, and to create the impression that Europe is about to betray everyone. In other words, it's the classic combination of fear, mistrust, and a dash of panic. Just the kind of content you would slot between cat videos and cooking tutorials. Continuing with the topic of another blood-curdling sensation, but only until critical thinking actually kicks in. This time a fabricated news story designed to look like it came from Euronews is circulating online, claiming that Ukrainian children are being subjected to mass sexual harassment in European schools. The authors of the fake news report claim there have been over 100 cases in 3 months, and add another dramatic detail: Ukrainian families are afraid to go to the police because of the risk of deportation. It sounds scary, emotional, and, yeah, you guessed it, completely made up. Alright, so let's start with a simple fact. There is no such publication on the official Euronews website. It is not available in other reputable European media outlets either. There are no confirmed figures, no statements from the police, and no comments from educational authorities. The pattern is painfully similar and painfully familiar, you see. They pick the most emotional topic, namely kids. Then they throw in some made-up stats that sound serious but don't have any basis in fact. Next, an appeal is made to an authoritative brand, in this case Euronews, whose logo is used as a decorative element. And finally, there is a hint that Ukrainians in Europe are disenfranchised, intimidated, and about to be left alone with all the horror. Now, in the end, this story proves one simple thing. When there are no arguments, fear, children, and a fake logo of a well-known media outlet will do the trick, at least for some. Russian propaganda does not convince, it frightens. It does not prove anything, it pushes emotional horror stories designed to cause panic and loss of trust. Information warfare is Russia's bread and butter, you see, and this is simply yet another example of a genre nobody enjoys, but everyone has to endure anyway. And with this, we conclude this edition of Break the Fake. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.